You know, I always say I can't wait for Deltarune to end so I can know all the answers to all the mysteries, but I'm beginning to say it so I can stop having these nefarious little shadow beasts consuming my every waking thought. Nah, no, I'm kidding. I love doing this. I genuinely expected my last video to sit at 30 views for the rest of its time on the internet, and I'm incredibly grateful for all the attention. There are just a few things I definitely would have gone over in more depth if I'd known it would get the traction it did. That's why I'm back again with another little video talking about the Knight and covering the brand new friend-related dialogue added to Chapter 5. You know the drill with these kinds of videos. First half we'll be talking about the Knight and the second will be friend, so let's cut to the chase. This is where I have to point out that this is a direct follow-up to my previous video, so you might want to go watch that either before or after this for it to make total sense. I always appreciate people bringing up contradictions and counter-arguments, so shout out to everyone that did that. I'd like to cover some things that I'd read there and some things I've been independently thinking of. I'd said the Knight was weaker, and I'd like to perhaps substantiate that claim a bit. I've seen it said that it only looked hurt because it rammed into a wall, and that is possible, but I have to ask the question of, well, why did it hit the wall in the first place? To quote one of my favorite videos, why did the Knight hit their head? Are they stupid? They were facing the wall when they hit it. It's not that they didn't see it, because they tried to slow down. I find that wall pretty hard to miss. This is especially silly because it's only Flowery chasing them, who really shouldn't be any threat. The Knight must have been afraid. Panicking, they try to make a quick escape with Asgore, but they can't decelerate as fast as they can accelerate, so they bonk their head. Even though they did hit the wall, I don't think it was just the wall that did this. It can take several rude busters to the face in Chapter 3 and be fine, but hitting its head a little made it struggle to cleave a single flower. For it to be nervous at the first place, it would need to genuinely fear what Flowery and the heroes could do to it, which shouldn't be the case given it has a scripted win in Chapter 3. Unless something happened. It isn't even the one who starts the battle, that's what the random Floridid is for. Flowery draws it into combat that it really seems like it would rather avoid. Where's that fighting spirit from a couple nights ago? This all being said, there is one obvious explanation that has overtaken the fandom, which is RUDY Knight, and I still don't believe it for one major reason. Red herrings. I know it sounds pretty silly to say anything that goes against your theory is just a red herring, but I'd be very willing to entertain the idea of it being canon. I just don't think it is. Deltarune is a game written by someone who is very, very good at getting you to be on the same emotional wavelength as the characters themselves, and this is no exception. The key emotion for Deltarune, though, is suspicious. To get you to feel this way, they have to give you enough to speculate, but not enough to answer. Take the Chapter 4 hospital scene, for example, where Rudy dismisses you if this is your first time there. In canon, it's there because he's a dying man who's upset you're only now bugging him after you know he's tuckered out from church. Out of canon, it's meant to feed the suspicion that the Knight's existence inherently creates. I have a rule about not counting out any theories from being possible, but this is honestly how I feel about all of the known Knight candidates, and Carol is no exception. Out of any regular Lightner, I like her the most as the Knight, but I still can't put my full faith in it. Doesn't it ever strike you how weird it is that we all had enough evidence to be divided between RUDY Knight and Carol Knight for, like, a full year? That is the point. We are meant to look at the holidays, knowing what we know about Des, and pin knighthood on them. My best example of this is Carol herself, really. To get anywhere, you have to think about this game less in terms of release and more in terms of chronological order as a game from time to time. Isn't it interesting that we spend chapters 1 through 3 not seeing hide nor hair of the woman, only for her to show up so soon after the Knight encounter with all those black katanas and, oh hey, what are those on her head? The Rudy hospital interaction would also happen probably directly before this if you go the reasonable route of church to the hometown interactions, including Rudy, then Noelle's house. This is where you finally get to see Carol in full, outside of the flashback. This could be evidence or another misdirect, which is what I think. I don't think we're actually supposed to be able to pin the antlers on the Knight so soundly just yet. This is another bit talking about counter-arguments, this time with the whole timeline of the Knight existing. I have more thoughts on the subject, but that's a pretty severe tangent from the point, so I'm going to try and keep this relevant like usual. I've heard that the Knight cannot be something that was created by the disappearance of December because Asgore found the Black Shard at quote-unquote the scene, same as other Dark Worlds, but my question is, well, if it really is Rudy or Carol taking on the helmet to find their daughter or whatever, why would it have been there? The Knight's ghastly form really implies to me that it can't be just a regular Lightner, so I doubt that the Knight armor just happens to be Dark World attire like Chris, Susie, Noelle, and Birdly take on. The only other explanation I can imagine would be that maybe the Knight was the one who made Des disappear, but I just don't know if it makes sense. The Knight would have to be something entirely unfamiliar to us that has existed for a long time. It doesn't feel like it fits with what we know about the Roaring Night, and I just can't think of a way to make it connect in a way I like, I'm sorry. There is one last thing I can think of, however, for it all to still make sense here. Shadow crystals seem to be pretty naturally occurring, so maybe that black shard was also naturally occurring. If it was spawned from broken dreams, all you need is a witness with dreams to break, and this is where I'd like to offer up Carol. Asgore is, well, I'm not sure how respected he is in the town after his fall from grace. It's implied he's told people about the Dark Worlds, because if you tell Undyne, she laughs at the idea for uncomfortably long for someone who otherwise shouldn't know what you're talking about, unless she heard it from Asgore and thought you were mocking him. Carol seems different, and I don't think it's that they're working together because they have different conspiracy boards. She seems to give him some pity on the rent, she lets him into her heavily guarded house even when she isn't home. I think Carol believed him. I think she was there, somehow. Perhaps helpless and unable to do anything, it's possible she let Asgore take the fall for the incident to cover it up. This could explain why she is the only one not to reject him out of her life and is continuing her work from the shadows. I'd also like to say that we are assuming that when Asgore says that day, he means when Des disappeared. We assume this because it makes a lot of sense, but I'd like to clarify that it is just an assumption. It's always possible that day was something else entirely, and there could have been plenty of time for the night to exist in the first place to drop a black shard. I know it's annoying to say, but I've seriously spent many years shaking my head at Mystery Man as Gaster on the sole principle that we couldn't definitively prove it, so it feels mandatory to say. As my last point for the night segment, there's another thing I want to touch on real quick, which is by going back to the knight's appearance. Something I didn't say is that, well, it rather looks like a titan, huh? Specifically these dandy fellows in the back here. And if the knight is a dream-turned-nightmare, I think that could be why it would look like a titan, because as Rousey says, they are the very idea of fear. If you expect me to talk about Gaster, I don't intend to do that. I'm not the Gaster guy, I am the themes guy. My first video here was all about Rousey and Friend, and I didn't think we were going to get such a hunk of information on it in this chapter, but I've been thinking about it ever since I first read it, and maybe I know what it means now. So let's follow up on another video. If you didn't watch my first one, that's completely fine. It's slightly outdated, but I still believe in it. If you don't feel like catching up though, my thesis was that Friend is a concept, like I imagined Rousey and perhaps the Knight to be. That concept being intrusive thoughts, or something like them. It only shows up in the corner of your eye and seemingly eggs you on into giving into your worst fears by confirming them. Now let's look at that new dialogue again. Well, isn't that interesting? I think it actually ends up playing into some metaphors and symbolism we're already familiar with. Let's start by talking about hands, and Chris's hands specifically. Something hands can be pretty known for representing is control. I mean, Chris's hands are literally what they use to rip out the soul and take control back. But I think it goes a bit deeper than that, connecting to the OCD thing. Chris is a fellow soldier in the hand-washing army, and let me tell you, washing your hands is sometimes the only control you can take back, at a price. To stave off the fear, you have to confirm the fear. Relevantly, it's interesting that Friend only bites you if you interact with it, if you acknowledge it. But this is ultimately why it is a bite on the hand, and why there is so much imagery of Chris losing their hand. It's not just saying, hey, Chris is gonna be down a limb later, so look out for that, but rather Chris will lose the control they do have, or at least are scared they will, which feels much bigger. Now let's talk about the rest of this interaction. I'll be kind of brushing over the hunting pack thing, cause I don't have fully fleshed out ideas on that part quite yet, and I'm pretty sure it's some Gaster nonsense that I just can't prove. I want to focus on the protein, though. The eggs you've been collecting are protein, and I want to take a swing to say that they represent ideas. I've believed for a long time now that the eggs and the man represent inspiration, right? You find them and spread them out into the world until you've done all you can, and this goes double for Man Country in Chapter 3, being an old game like Toby Fox takes inspiration from, and a world that will be gone soon too. But that would be why Friend is hungry for it. You can't have dark thoughts without ideas to sustain them off of, and what better protein than the kind you get from seeing things you shouldn't? The body describes the lengths people go to in order to avoid it, and what wouldn't you do to avoid your fears? If you're someone that lives with these fears regularly, I'm sure you understand this. What would you do? Wow, you made it through another video! I'm so proud. As always, new evidence or counter-arguments are always welcome, but now I finally get to gush about how nice you all are. I've been on the internet for a very long time, but I've never had so much actual attention like this before. I'm immensely honored that so many of you thought my ideas were worth your time and that so many of you opted to come along with me. I'll say, I don't expect to be spot on with any of my theories, but I do have my fingers crossed that I'm onto something in some capacity, you know? As a treat for sticking around long enough, I'll tell you that I'm actually putting together some ideas about the prophecy for a next video. I haven't actually started scripting yet, so I don't know if I'll be able to pull together a formal case, but I have a lot of ideas. We'll see. I also couldn't think of a clean way to weave this in, but Friend being a specific bane to Chris could also tie into them liking dogs or wanting to be one, because cats and dogs are kind of notorious animal rivals, even if it's not true in real life. That's all I got for you today. Thank you again for tuning in, and stay safe.